Hello everyone, I'm Sheridan Plummer of First National Bank, and welcome to this week's special edition of First National Banknotes. Last week, we opened the doors to the discussion that took place on banking and the marijuana industry at the 2018 Stanley French Education Forum. Today, we're going to continue with part 2 of that very important subject matter, but focus on some of the legal implications for St. Lucian citizens overseas sending income generated from the sale of marijuana back home and traveling with marijuana. It's going to be lit, so stay tuned for the details of this new 2018 edition of First National Banknotes.
First National Bank says get the home you've always wanted with zero down. That's right. As we celebrate more than 80 years of being here for you as the first Indigenous bank, we're giving 80 individuals 100% financing to achieve their dream of home ownership. 100% zero down payment, 100% financing for your dream home. Call or come into First National Bank today and ask about our zero down payment, 100% financing for mortgages. First National Bank, here for you.
What we want to talk about, Arijak and Claret, is basically what happens on the 17th when marijuana becomes legal in Canada. Am I able as a bank to conduct business, do a wire transfer for a Canadian company that says to me, we are a cannabis company in Canada seeking to make payment to someone in St. Lucia?
I am going to be guided by the law. And that's why I'm sitting right next to my legal officer. So if I have to look at a transaction with a company that is dealing with cannabis, I am going to look at what the law says to me, and I'm going to be guided by that. So I'm going to look at what proceeds of crime says, right? The proceeds of crime, and I know we have some lawyers in the audience, and they'll help me if I need. The proceeds of crime means that it is proceeds of a scheduled offense. It also says that any property or benefits derived, obtained, or realized directly or indirectly by any person from any act or omission that occurred outside St. Lucia and would, if it had occurred in St. Lucia, have constituted a scheduled offense. What does that say to me? I will let my legal officer interpret that for me.
Under the Drugs Prevention of Misuse Act of the laws of St. Lucia, cannabis, the possession of cannabis, the growth of cannabis is a scheduled offense. It's a controlled substance, and it's under Schedule 2 of the Drugs Act. It's Part 1, a Class A drug. Now, with respect to the definition of proceeds of crime, which Mrs. Taylor would have elaborated on, if as an institution we were to engage in receiving funds from a company engaged in the sale of cannabis, by virtue of our laws and the definition of proceeds of crime, it would be considered, the funds would be considered proceeds of crime. Because even if the act occurred outside of St. Lucia, currently under our legislation, anything to do with marijuana, cannabis, that is considered an offense. So in a sense, that would be, the funds received would be proceeds of crime.
So that was a very short discussion as far as I was concerned.
So you're really going to sit here and say to me that I engage in a legal industry in my country where I pay taxes, I hire employees, I have government permits, I'm registered and regulated, but I am a St. Lucian who needs to send money to my family back home in St. Lucia, and my money will be considered criminal. That's what you say?
Yep, short words.
Okay.
It has to be.
So if it's easy for us to come to that conclusion when Jonathan Johannes or Tom Jones is engaging in the transaction, explain to me your position on the Canadian banks who are part of a branch network with parents in Canada who actually bank the proceeds of the marijuana industry over there. Are these entities in the Caribbean part of a money laundering syndicate?
Well, therein lies the dilemma. And I can only say that I'm guided by our Proceeds of Crime Act, and if I have to stick with that, it has to be a crime. And so I will have to concentrate on what is coming into First National Bank, and if it's coming from a Canadian institute that from my research, and I will have to do due diligence on it, and it says that they have any connection to the marijuana industry, we cannot accept the funds. I am particularly concerned with my correspondent banking relationship, which says to me in the US, and I'm very, very concerned with our US correspondent bank, because federally, marijuana is not legal in the US. And so when I think about it, it means that if I had to engage with anybody or any company that deals with marijuana, it would increase my risk as a bank and jeopardize my relationship with my correspondent bank in the US.
It's funny you mention correspondent banks. Now I'm going to try not to get upset today, right? Because we're not in my office and we're out in the open. So you mentioned correspondent banks. Who's our correspondent banker for Canada?
BOM, Bank of Montreal.
All right, let me read this to you. Bank of Montreal and Toronto Dominion banks are emerging as the banks of choice for Canada's burgeoning marijuana industry. With less than, and this is a dated article, right? So this is last year, October. With less than a year to go before Canada plans to legalize recreational cannabis, and 16 years after making it legal for medical use, Bank of Montreal, your correspondent, yeah, and Toronto Dominion are providing business accounts to at least 21 cannabis companies. And that was last year, October. That's not even when it's made legal in Canada, right? So it was medical marijuana, legal in Canada, Bank of Montreal, 21 cannabis companies. That's our correspondent in Canada. Now, here you have your correspondent getting into the business. And here you have Caribbean banks afraid of being de-risked by correspondents. I will still go back to my earlier question, though, because I didn't get the answer quite clear. I'm asking specifically about the Canadian banks that will get involved in the legal cannabis business in Canada.
Okay, so the proceeds of crime, it means A, proceeds of a scheduled offense, or B, any property or benefits derived, obtained or realized directly or indirectly by any person from any act or omission that occurred outside St. Lucia and would, if it had occurred in St. Lucia, have constituted a scheduled offense.
So that poses a problem for our sector. What the law is saying is that if it would be considered a crime in St. Lucia, no matter where it happened, it's still a crime.
Pretty much.
The proceeds, yes.
Okay, so we have a problem. Because Canada legalizes marijuana, Canadian banks are legally operating in their industry, but these same banks are operating here, where we would look at it as a crime. How do we treat with those banks? You know something else that was amazing? Soon after Justin Trudeau made the announcement of October 17th, Air Canada made an announcement as well. Air Canada advised that come October 17th, Canadians would be allowed to travel with marijuana in their luggage within Canadian borders. Make sense? So it's within Canada, it's legal, you can fly with it. Good. Now, the other thing we have to recognize is that marijuana will be moving from Vancouver to Toronto, to Nova Scotia, to Alberta, to Saskatchewan. It'll be moving by road, it will be moving by train, it will be moving by plane. So Air Canada might very well be, in Canada, one of the #1 transporters and logistics companies for the marijuana industry. Yeah. But if I were to apply the laws that you just read, I would refer to Air Canada as a trafficking organization. Yeah? So therein lies another problem. Is Air Canada a drug trafficking company? Or would it be come the 17th of October?
I guess within Canada it would be legal.
Well, I'm not Canadian, right?
Yeah,
None of us are, so.
We continue to see it as illegal, so they would.
Okay. So Air Canada's activities will continue to be seen as illegal, right? That's what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I'm hearing. When they transfer money to pay SLASPA for landing fees, and when they transfer money to pay their employees in St. Lucia, how do we treat with that if we have the Air Canada account? When people use their credit card terminals to pay for excess baggage, additional luggage, or even a ticket, are they transacting with a trafficking entity which would otherwise be illegal?
That's what it is.
So if that account is with First National, we got a problem.
We would have to exit. You would have the proposal to exit on your desk first thing in the morning.
So if I'm being forced to exit these companies, why are they still operating in St. Lucia? So we have a catch-22. How do we continue to bank legitimate businesses that we have known and trusted all our lives? A law changes in their country allowing them to do things legally, but it prohibits them from conducting business out here. So I have another question. And I don't even want to ask it because it might, you know, they say something about goat mouth. When you say something, it actually happened. But I'll say it anyway. So God forbid we get hit by a hurricane. And Canada transfers aid. Soon after announcing that 20% of the GDP of Canada is fueled by the cannabis industry, and they announced $40 billion of tax revenue from the industry. Can we accept aid? Can we accept scholarships?
I guess we would have to say no thank you to all of the aid. If it is that the government of St. Lucia has an account with us and that money is going to come through to us, we'll have to return it.
Really?
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding what you both are saying, some level of discussion needs to take place right after Canada passes those regulations at a legal and political level.
Definitely.
Well, I was happy to see that the legal fraternity had started something. I missed it. I was not able to be there at the time. Not sure what came out of it, but it means that we need more of that kind of discussion to come out because something is going to have to change. Otherwise, it's clear, once I am executive manager of compliance, we cannot We will not. I will not agree to allowing the funds through.
Okay.
We've now come to the end of today's special edition. We've now come to the end of today's special edition of First National Banknotes on the annual Stanley French Education Forum. However, we've not come to the end of the forum itself. Stay tuned for part 3 as the heated discussion on banking and the marijuana industry continues right here on First National Banknotes. We are open every Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to 12 noon at our various locations, and you can view this show again right here every Wednesday on HDS at 8 p.m. or visit us online at www.firstnationalbankonline.com. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm Sheridan Plummer. See you next time, and remember, First National Bank is here for you.